You got it? Yes. Very good. Just wait for a few more people to come in. Another couple of minutes. Anyway, for this evening, we do the chanting at 7:50 and then 8 o'clock. We'll only do half an hour of questions, and then we'll just go into the loving kindness meditation and the final blessing. Because in the morning, he'll be very busy. And so in the morning, I'm sure that many of you, most of you, will be up here at 6 o'clock in the morning doing the yoga. Some might, but I doubt it. You'll be in your beds dreaming of yoga, so you suddenly wake up, sadhu, sadhu, oh, what time is it? Where am I? No, you can have a rest in the morning. It's a big day, a very busy day. And for those of you travelling, it's a very busy day travelling. So here we go. The Nibbana through Anapanasati. So the only of the 4 Satipatthanas which I covered was the mindfulness of breathing. The mindfulness of the body. We also have the same with mindfulness of feelings, or I prefer calling it mindfulness of experience. Then mindful of the mind, which is a very interesting thing, which is very hard to actually to do that particular Satipatthana, even though people think they're doing the mind, they're not. And then the mindfulness of mind objects. But you can have a look at that later for yourself if you wish. But here going through Nibbana through Anapanasati, it brings everything together, especially through the meditation on the breath. So Nibbana through Anapanasati, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it completes the 4 focuses of mindfulness. And when the 4 focuses of mindfulness are developed and cultivated, they complete the 7 enlightenment factors. And when the 7 enlightenment factors are developed and cultivated, they complete true knowledge and deliverance, enlightenment. And first of all, Anapanasati, even the name Sati is like Satipatthana, mindfulness. Ana means along with, and Pana is a word for breath, which is also the word for a living being. As you remember, I hope, your first precept, Pana Atipata Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Atipata means destroying Pana, living beings, and literally it means with breath. And there is so much similarity with the Indian languages and with the Greek and Latin languages. The word for breath in Latin is animalis. So something with breath is an animal. And animalis is the breath. Pana is an animal, and the prana, or sometimes in Sanskrit, pranayama, prana, that's the breath. So we do Nibbana through the mindfulness of the breath, but I pronounce it very clearly there. It's Anapanasati. It is not Anapanasati. Nothing to do with torturing yourself. So, mindfulness of breathing completes the 4 focuses of mindfulness, the 4 Satipatthana. And this is an important point because many times people say, watching the breath anapanasati is samatha meditation. And satipatthana is vipassana meditation. And here you read that mindfulness of breathing completes the four focuses of mindfulness. So if four focuses of mindfulness, satipatthana, is vipassana, you complete vipassana by doing samatha. In other words, there's no difference between these two. Samatha, vipassana, they're the same. Ajahn Chah, similarly, he would put his hand up and say, because he didn't have much visual aids. Can you see the front of my hand? He would ask us. I say, yeah, but you can't see the back of my hand, can you? Now you can see the back of my hand, but you can't see the front. But I guarantee the front is still there, but you can't see it. That's like samatha vipassana. You may only be able to see one side. You think you're just doing samatha, but vipassana is right behind. You think you're doing vipassana, but samatha is right behind, because you cannot split them up. He says samatha vipassana are like the back and the front of a hand. And you maybe one is slightly in front, but the other one is always behind. You cannot separate them. And I remember Ajahn Chah saying that a lot. And so this is obviously one reason that the Buddha would agree with him. By doing anapanasati, classic samatha practice, you complete the four foundations of mindfulness, which is vipassana. Anyway, mindfulness of breathing completes the four focuses of mindfulness. And how does mindfulness of breathing, developed and cultivated, complete the four focuses of mindfulness? When the in-breath and out-breath are long, and you are aware that they are long, when the in-breath and out-breath are short, and you are aware that they are short, when you learn to experience the whole of the breath as you breathe in and out, when you learn to calm the breath as you breathe in and out, those are the first four stages of anapanasati, which we also covered in the first of the satipatthanas, mindfulness of the breath, as part of the body. On those occasions, when you do the first four stages of anapanasati, on those four occasions, you are mindful of the body, having restrained the five hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. In and out breathing is regarded by the Buddha as a body in the category of bodies. That is why on that occasion, a meditator abides mindful of the body, having restrained the five hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. So what we're saying here, rather what the Buddha is saying, is that when you are doing the breath meditation, the first four stages, the breath is in, is long or short, knowing the whole breath and then calming the breath, you're watching the breath, and the breath is part of this thing we call the body, according to the Buddha. So that is an interesting point, because it's one of the strong arguments to say that the third of those little practices, being able to experience the whole body of the breath, there it is very much the Buddha is talking about not the legs or the toes, you're talking about the body of the breathing. The breath is regarded as a conglomerate which lies in that first of the satipatthanas, the body awareness. It's body stuff. When you learn to... Now, the reason I go on to this, because it's also important that when we meditate, we're never afraid of happiness and joy. It's not as if that something goes wrong when we're enjoying ourselves in a religion. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I used to go to church, and the church was so cold. It was England, and there was no heating, it was all stone. And the pews were hard wood, and no one ever told a joke in church. And as a kid, it was like a miserable place. And from that, you sort of learn that, you're going to a sort of a church or anything religious was just no fun at all. And that is even come even into some Buddhist practices as well, where you're not allowed to smile. You're not allowed to be happy. like that poor nun in the temple in Hong Kong. Or, or if you do start to get some joy in meditation, stop it, you'll get attached. And this part here shows you're supposed to get some joy and happiness. And it's not getting attached which is the problem here. It is fear. But anyway, when you learn to experience joy as you breathe in and out, when you learn to experience pleasure as you breathe in and out, when you learn to experience the mental formation, it's called the citta sankhara of piti sukha together as you breathe in and out. When you learn to calm this mental formation of piti sukha as you breathe in and out, on that occasion you are mindful of experience, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. For being mindful of the pleasure associated with this stage of the breath meditation is being mindful of experience, of Vedana. That is why on this occasion a meditator abides mindful of experience, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. Now there's a lot which comes out of just that little paragraph, which is one of the reasons I wanted to mention it today, is that first of all, that you learn to experience the joy and the happiness which comes in meditation. You know, you relax to the max. And when you start to enjoy yourself in meditation, it gets peaceful and joyful. Don't think something must be wrong. And remember, look, you're not watching the breath. You're watching the piti sukha, the joy and happiness now, as you breathe in and out. So sometimes people think, oh, I should go back to the breath. The breath has done its job. Now you're watching the happiness and the joy which comes from meditation. And good old Ajahn Ganha, breathing in, sabha. Sabha. That's what he was teaching. He just jumped right to this stage without even watching the breath, first of all. And it was the pleasure. And it's important to get that pleasure, because once you get the joy and the happiness, you find you can sit down and meditate for a long period of time. And it's not effort, it's happiness and joy. You're having good fun. But it's a sort of happiness and fun, which is, and it says here, it is, you learn to experience the mental formation as you breathe in and out, the mental formation of happiness and joy. And this gives you the clue that this is what you add on, or how you see the breath. It comes from the mind, it's not from the breath. The breath is never joyful, the breath is never blissful or happy. If it was in the breath, then you'd be happy all the time when you're breathing. It is just the way we look at the breath. And this is something I've said, it's an important part of meditation. I don't know why more people don't focus on it. It is that when your mindfulness starts to get strong, so you've done the first 4 parts of the mindfulness just on the breath, your mindfulness is supposed to be getting stronger and stronger. And as it gets stronger and energized, your mind becomes able to see beauty in all sorts of things. The pitter-patter of the rain, little birds, what some people call boring, you find very pleasing. And you have these wonderful experiences of looking at, what's one of these? Oh, my most beautiful clump of bamboo. First retreat I ever did in Cambridge, it was just vacation time, and we hired boarding houses, and we only went for some exercise every morning before breakfast for 1 hour. And because I knew that territory very well, my walk was to the botanical gardens in the back of Bateman Street. I still remember this, it was such a wonderful experience, strange, but very helpful in my monastic and also my spiritual life. I went for a walk for 1 hour. It was supposed to be for exercise. But 5 minutes, from the boarding houses where we were doing meditation retreat, as I entered the back entrance of the botanical gardens, there was a clump of bamboo. a clump of bamboo. And as I passed it and looked at it, glanced at it at first, I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. It's the most amazing clump of bamboo I'd ever seen. And of course, you know that in Chinese watercolours they always have clumps of bamboo in the watercolour because it's a very sensuous, just the way that it bends, out from gravity, but very, very slowly, gently, in a sort of parabola, and how it tapers to the very end. All the leaves are not bulky and big; they're very, very slim, and their shape and their colours are just magnificent. And this was one of the most beautiful specimens of bamboo I'd ever seen. And I literally was transfixed. I couldn't take my eyes away from it. It was just beautiful. But I had enough presence of mind to know that if I continued staring like that for another 5 or 10 minutes, someone would see me, the student, gaping at a clump of bamboo, and they would call the ambulance. And I don't know about Hong Kong and Indonesia, but you've got to be very careful sometimes because people don't understand meditation and letting go. First time I came here to Australia, over in a first little temple, and there was a Nepalese gentleman, and unfortunately he had an epileptic fit. And so I called the ambulance, and the ambulance men came, and he was, he's okay, but they took him to the hospital because they asked him. The first thing they asked him is, what's your name and what day of the week is it? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He said he didn't know, and that was a sign that he had an epileptic fit, could have been a stroke. So they put him in the back of the van, and then afterwards, I never told the ambulance men. But, I did not know what day of the week it was. Because it didn't concern me. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What day is it today? You live for such a life and you don't watch the TV or see newspapers often, and you don't know what day of the week it is. So from that time on, I always made sure that I knew what day of the week it was. Otherwise, they'd stop me and say, and they say, what day of the week it is? Well, I don't know, it doesn't matter, it's just now. Present moment awareness, okay? In the van, sir. So anyway, there was a bench next door, a bench close by, so I sat down on the bench so I could stare without people wondering that I was going crazy, I was on drugs or something. And I just looked at this clump of bamboo, and there was never enough time for, it was a 9-day retreat, 8 days out of those 9. I just sat down and watched that clump of bamboo. Never finished with it. It was just delightful. And at the end of the retreat, back to studies, back to messing around with parties and girlfriends and stuff and work. And then I had a free afternoon. I got on my bicycle, so I'm going to go visit the most beautiful clump of bamboo in the world. I'm really excited. I got there and went into the gate and looked at the most dry, desiccated, ordinary. It was actually worse than ordinary. It's a bamboo. It doesn't grow in cold climates like England. It shouldn't have been there. It should have been in a hothouse or somewhere, but not out in the open. It was just dying and desiccated and just grey and dusty. And I just wondered, where's the most beautiful clump of bamboo? Where's it gone? It was obvious it was not in the clump of bamboo. It was in my mind. It was a chitta sankhara. It was how I looked at the bamboo. And I could see it was just amazing. When your mind is free from the hindrances and energized, and the mindfulness is powerful. And of course, should I tell the other story about here in Jhana Grove? You're saying no, but now I started it, of course I have to. I'll just tell it in brief, but it's true, and it's as I remembered it, it was the middle cubicle in the male toilet block opposite the laundry, and some of the monks wanted to put a little sign in there. In this cubicle, Ajahn Brahm saw, and I'll let you know in a moment what I saw in the toilet block. That means some good meditation. here, teaching and meditating and getting really blissed out. And so, but you have to go to the toilet. So I went to the toilet. Instead of going to my room, that was closer. So I didn't use this one, it was too close to the hall. So I went in there and just the middle cubicle, sat down and did the number 2. And then what happened afterwards, I just, checked. Everything's okay. I've never in my life seen anything so beautiful. The most beautiful piece of SHIT I've ever seen in my life. And don't just, next time, go and have a look. Not in mine, but yours. All the different colours of brown. And just the way they all put together like a sculptor, and the fragrance was overpowering. Beautifully so. Now, I think many of you, I don't know why you keep laughing, you must be as sick as I am. But I don't just say that just just to shock you. This was true. What was should usually be disgusting was actually very beautiful. And I remember one of the disciples, he works at CERN in Geneva. He's a top physicist. And he said that answered a question which he always wondered about in philosophy, the nature of beauty. Beauty is not in the eye of the beholder, it's in the mind. It's a chitta sankhara. It's how the mind looks at things. If because my mind was just really blissing out, very powerful, no hindrances to be seen, and he could look at a clump of bamboo, and he could also look at a piece of shit. And it was beautiful, literally. Fragrant, everything about it was just amazing. So that's actually a great insight there. What is beauty? What is ugliness? And ugliness, negativity, is when you have a very, very tired mind. Depressed. Nothing is beautiful. Beauty is out there, or it's there to be seen, only when the mind is strong. And that person the other day, that English poet, William Blake, to see a world in a grain of sand, a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. That was describing those experiences. Just his mind was obviously so strong. I'm not sure whether he was on drugs or whatever, but certainly that his mind was so strong when he had those experiences. And what he saw, was really powerful, much more than you'd expect. And that happens. That happens with a clump of bamboo and a piece of number 2 in the toilet bowl. Imagine what it'd be like when you're watching your breath. It really becomes beautiful. Beautiful breath, and the sound of the rain on the roof. Symphony. Or like that monk who his brother was snoring, and it became, for him, just the most melodious music. It wasn't in the snoring, it was the chitta sankhara he made out of it, the mind. So it's an important part to know that, because that's where the pleasure and happiness come from meditation. It's a sign that your hindrances have got very weak and you've got really energized. So, you learn to experience the joy as you breathe in and out, the pleasure as you breathe in and out, experiences the mental formation of piti sukha as you breathe in and out. You learn to calm this mental formation. I'm going to maybe change that word from calming to smoothing that mental formation as you breathe in and out. On those occasions you are mindful of experience, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. For being mindful of the pleasure associated with this stage of breath meditation is being mindful of experience. That is why on that occasion a meditator abides mindful of experience, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. And of course, at those stages, when you get pleasure in the meditation, you can sit for long periods of time. Not because you're trying to beat your personal best. You're not trying to do anything. You just can't move, you're just enjoying it. And I'm sure it's happened to a few people that sometimes you're meditating and it's so lovely, so delightful. You know it's time for breakfast or lunch or a talk. So I should go to the talk, but no, I can eat later on. And you carry on meditating. And it's wonderful when that happens. You know, you'd rather have another half an hour, however long it takes in meditation, and go for lunch, knowing you're going to miss out in the afternoon. Gives you an idea of just how joyful and happy it is. And I've said and say a lot that once the joy, the happiness starts to come into meditation, which will comes eventually, that is where the meditation really takes off. And people want to meditate a lot. It's not, well, got to do half an hour every day. You say, well, you know, just great, time off. I'm going to meditate and enjoy. Because it really is joyful. Oh, I've lost my place. Okay. Then the next, I pressed the wrong button. That's the trouble with these things. Too many buttons. Whoa. 44 something. And now a bit more. Here we go. Oh, the next part. When you learn to experience the chitta as you breathe in and out, when you learn to brighten the chitta, I call it the nimitta, bring joy to the chitta as you breathe in and out, when you learn to settle the nimitta as you breathe in and out, when you learn to enter jhana as you breathe in and out, on those occasions you are mindful of the chitta, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware. Having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose, and mindful. Because I do not say that there is a development of mindfulness of breathing for one who is dull, who is not fully aware. In other words, reaching a jhana, with the hindrances gone. That is why on that occasion a meditator abides mindful of the mind, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose, and mindful. So you've got this beautiful, beautiful breath, delightful, the joy, the happiness, and then you calm it down, and then the breath, like anything else, because it gets smooth, it vanishes, and that's when you get, you know, what I've been talking about, the nimitta. And for those people who say, oh, the nimitta is not mentioned by the Buddha in the suttas, it's in, for those of you who will listen to this later on, it's in the Upakalesa Sutta, number 128 of the Majjhima Nikaya. Now the problem was, though, that Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, even though it mentions this so many times, the whole sutta is about the problems you have with nimittas when you're meditating. But Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, I did try and scold him as best a monk can scold another monk. His translation was, he called it that thing, instead of nimitta, because he couldn't really find an English word, you know, corresponding to nimitta. Even these days, I prefer using the Pali word, nimitta. But no, there's about 20 different cases of the nimitta not being able to hold it and develop it, and because of excitement or too much energy, too little energy, fear. And there it's in the suttas, but because of a translation which wasn't very clear, it's in the footnote. But you know what it's like in footnotes. Just, you know, when you signed up for the car insurance premium, they say, you only can pay the insurance when no one's driving it. Or some sort of loophole somewhere. People don't look at footnotes. So because of that people miss it. But it's right in there, and that's what the nimitta is. So what happens is you are watching your breath, and the breath gets so beautiful, so peaceful, lots of joy. Joy is a sign you've got enough energy. And then the breath gets still and vanishes. And in its place you get this beautiful light in the mind, called a nimitta. Now, as some people keep telling me, and it's so true, that sometimes a nimitta, this light in the mind, comes and you can still feel your body, you can still hear sounds. All that really is that the nimitta is getting strong and the five senses are getting weak. A way to visually describe it as this, I said this even at the interview time, these are your five senses and they usually take most of the energy because you have to see, you have to hear, like when I'm talking now. So the five senses get most of the energy, they're very, very strong, turned on. And your mind is actually quite weak. It doesn't really get too much energy because the five senses get the first part of it. And so what happens is as you come to a retreat center, you're not doing very much, you're not eating in the afternoon or the evenings, you're not watching movies or not playing football or table tennis or whatever. Things are getting calmed down. And actually that sometimes people think, oh, I haven't got really calmed down. But I don't know what it was like yesterday for you. I'm sure for many people, you get in that bus and you go out, whoa, what's going on here? It's very sort of quite a change, being in a monastery for a few days or at a retreat center and see what it's like outside. You have slowed down enormously. And sometimes you don't notice it. But anyway, your five senses get weakened and your sixth sense gets the energy. So there comes a time when they're about the same intensity, five senses in the mind. And that's when just the mind, the chitta, starts to become visible in your mind. Become aware of it. Just a little light comes up every now and again. You can still hear, but the mind is getting enough power, it's starting to manifest. And sometimes, I was saying to somebody, that sometimes if you do lots of meditation, you're really sort of hot with the deep meditations, and then that nimitta, your mind gets so strong that even when you're having lunch, you're eating your food through the nimitta. There's a big light in front of you, and you've got to put it. That's easy enough to do, it's just a little bit disturbing at first until you get used to it, because the mind is so strong, even when you're fully awake. But that, sometimes happens, but most of the time, it is just, you just get those in deep meditation. So you see a light come up in your mind, or a vision or something. And first of all, with the nimittas, don't ever think, oh, this can't be a nimitta. I'm just imagining it. There's a light on the wall somewhere. Oh, there's a flashlight or a headlight seen through the windows. And my goodness, if there was a flashlight or a headlight, seen through one of those high windows, it means that there's an aircraft about to crash into the meditation room, or a flying car. Well, I'm not quite sure, but kangaroos don't jump that high. So whatever it is, it's not sort of a light which is artificial. It is nimittas. Only weak ones, and they can come up pretty early. So never doubt it, it probably is. But the point is, those nimittas, when they first come out, they're not that strong. It's best to get back to the breath. Beautiful, delightful. When it gets really nice, oh yeah, then your mind is pretty strong. And when the light comes up, you can actually be with it. And the next stage, when you experience that citta, that nimitta, you learn to brighten the nimitta. They have a word that's called like sampasadana. And sampasadana means joy, but it also means like confidence. And what it really means is that you can actually stay with it. You can allow it to grow. And, you find joy in it. You're not afraid. And it just grows and grows and grows. The nimitta starts to become more and more beautiful, more and more powerful. And it does get very powerful and very beautiful. You don't want to get it powerful and want to get it beautiful, otherwise you'll stop everything. It's just when you're calm and peaceful, it just builds up energy by itself. And then when you learn to settle the nimitta, still it's samadhi. Keep it still so it doesn't keep going all over the place. And so it doesn't move, it doesn't flash, it doesn't come and go. It just stays. And those two are part of how to deal with the light in the mind. And they always go together because the stronger it is, the easier it is to stay with it. It just grabs you. It's just so beautiful. Fear, please don't be afraid, because sometimes, and it happens, people see those nimittas and they think, oh my goodness, it's like watching a sun, it's so brilliant, so bright. I am going to go blind. You don't see it with your eyes. You see it with the mind. So you can be as bright as you like. At other times, this is one of the wonderful hindrances. Still it's a hindrance, but it's a nice one. Of all the hindrances, I think this is the one which people would most like to experience. And that's when you get afraid that you can't take so much pleasure. More pleasure than you've had ever before. And it's just, no human being can take so much. And of course you can. So go for it. No fear at all. And it becomes, as it says, you probably heard the phrase many times, it becomes pabhasara, radiant, like a sun. That's your little nimitta. And it just comes, it'll happen to you. It's not just the stuff of monks. And then afterwards, or nuns, you just then go into it. The fourth of these, you are... And when you learn to enter the jhana, you liberate the citta. They call it sort of vimoksha, vimoksha, freedom. That's to liberate the mind. And all that, you liberate it from what? Just like the mind being in the prison of the five senses. And it escapes. Escapes from the five senses, so it's in its own realm. Beautiful, powerful. People were even talking today about what is the mind? Is the mind in the body? Is it in the brain? Where is it? And of course, that's a question which you'll never know the answer to until you know what you're talking about. What is this mind, this citta? And here you find the citta is a separate realm altogether. Oops. Oh, that's better. So it's a separate realm altogether, and it is experiencing it for yourself. The five senses disappeared. It is like, this is a simile which I developed, but it's based on the simile of the goldsmith. And if you have a gold and you want to make it into an ornament or jewellery, you have to first of all take out all the impurities from the gold. And once you have all the impurities removed, then you've got pure 100% gold, then you can find out the nature of gold as a chemist. You get insight into what gold is. But I instead use a simile of the emperor. An emperor only appears in public wearing 5 clothings. The helmet covers its head, the jacket overlaps the top of the helmet, down to the wrists and to the waist, gloves which overlap the sleeves of the jacket, and trousers which overlap the bottom of the jacket, and big boots which cover up the feet and overlap the bottom of the trousers. Every part of the body of the emperor is covered with 5 pieces of clothing. And the emperor is a very important person, very powerful, but no one knows who the emperor is, whether it's a female or a male, or whether it comes from Hong Kong or Jakarta. They haven't seen the emperor yet, whether it's old or young. Well, they don't know what the emperor is, because all they've ever seen, the emperor appearing in 5 pieces of clothing, all covered up. And so if you want to find out the very important emperor, take the clothes off, and then you can find out exactly what the emperor is. And of course, that's similarly the 5 pieces of clothing are your seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. 5 senses. When those get subdued, calm down, disappear, then you can see the emperor, the one in charge, the citta. And the Buddha is saying here, I do not say there is the development of mindfulness of breathing, for one who is dull, who is not fully aware. I mean, you really are get to really powerful awarenesses here. When some people say, oh, yeah, I was really peaceful and still, and it was just so peaceful, but I'm not quite sure what was going on. And it's not jhana. That was just calm, but you haven't got the awareness that this is really aware, fully aware, powerfully aware. And especially afterwards, when you emerge afterwards, wow, you are alert, alive, awake, like you've been on actually I've never had Red Bull, but people say that it gives this big boost of energy. But this is just pure energy, powerful, happy. So I remember once, this retreat years ago, someone came up to me and said, oh, I'm a bit disappointed. I said, why? What's happened? Our meditation's not so good this retreat. Really, what happened? I said, oh, I could only get into second jhana, I couldn't get to third. What the hell are you talking about? Whatever it was, that wasn't any jhana. Even in the first jhana, whoa, 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 that was, whoa. It's wonderful states, and you are totally aware. This is like being half dead compared to the mindfulness. This is why the Buddha says here, I do not say there is the development of mindfulness of breathing for one who is dull, who is not fully aware. Because when you get into those jhanas, the hindrances are gone. No sloth and torpor, no restlessness, no wanting, no ill will, no doubt. You are powerful, you are buzzing. And when you learn to explore impermanence in breath meditation, learn to explore things fading away in breath meditation, learn to explore things ceasing in breath meditation, when you learn to explore relinquishing things in breath meditation, on these occasions you are mindful of mind objects, the Dhamma, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful, having seen with wisdom the impermanence, fading away, cessation and relinquishment of the 5 hindrances, you are mindful with equanimity. That is why on that occasion you are mindful of mind objects, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. That is how mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated completes the 4 focuses of mindfulness. So first of all, that you are energized. Real meditation never makes you dull. You go through dullness, you go through sleepiness, but you persist and it really sort of energizes you. And the seeing the impermanence, fading away, cessation, relinquishment of the 5 hindrances. Those are the 4 things which happen on the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th stage of Anapanasati. And the impermanence, that is actually where you see things have always been there and now no longer there. The idea of impermanence, anicca, I've got a lot of my understanding of Pali, from its use in the Vinaya. Because in the Vinaya, these are the monastic rules. And that's actually why I learned Pali, because there's so many discussions about what the rule really meant, what it didn't mean. And so I realized the only way to find out is to learn the Pali and read the Vinaya in Pali. The nice things about the Vinaya, they were ordinary events of ordinary people in ordinary life. So, you asked the nuns, it's too late because you went there yesterday, the group of 6 nuns, always being naughty, the group of 6 monks, they were just so naughty, those group of 6 monks. Those group of 6 monks, there was a group of 17 monks who were very, very young. They managed just to squeeze in, but they were very highly looked after and pampered, so that as soon as they became novices, the group of 6 monks used to tease them. And they literally, this is one of the rules, that they literally found one of those group of 17 monks, held him down and tickled him until he died. The tickle to death. And then that was the story so many years ago. But Oh yeah, we've got a bit of time. The famous story about the holy water. Pajitya number 8 for the bhikkhunis. Yeah, no, you know it now, don't you remember it? Another gross Ajahn Brahm story. This is from, check it out, the 8th Pajitya for bhikkhunis. Because in those days, the nuns' monastery, they thought they couldn't be too far away from civilization because they were maybe subject to bad people coming to violate them and stuff. So that they were on the edge of town or maybe inside the town for safety. And of course, like any other place, had a nice wall, a nice compound, well looked after, but they didn't have sewage systems like we have these days. And so, it was a job of one of the nuns, a junior nun, to empty the latrine. With bucket and just put it in the cesspit wherever it was supposed to go. But on this morning, like people, we're lazy. If there's a shortcut and no one's around to see us, we'll do it. So instead of throwing it into the sump or whatever it's supposed to go, she decided to throw it over the wall. It was really early in the morning. No one would be walking at that time of the morning. But there is a part of the Dhamma, eternal law. It's called Murphy's Law. And I think you all know Murphy's Law in Hong Kong or in Jakarta. Murphy's Law says if it can happen, it will happen. And it was true. That morning there was a gentleman who was going to the palace to see the king to negotiate a contract. He was a businessman. And so he was, in the early light of the morning, he was walking to the palace, thinking about how he's going to present his business proposition to His Majesty the King. He wasn't really all that mindful, thinking about just how much profit he can make, when out of nowhere came a bucket load of shit all over his head. Because the nun didn't realise it's so unlikely there'd be someone on the other side of the wall, but that morning there was. And imagine just what it must be like. You're growing into the equivalent in those days of a pinstripe suit and a nice tie, everything perfect, and you get a bucket of shit over you from nowhere. And he knew where it came from because the nuns' monastery was in there. So, he lost his equanimity. He lost his kindness. And he went, I'm going to burn that monastery down. Those aren't real nuns. I'm going to really And he was really enraged. Now, the only way you could see in that time of the morning, they had these torches. They were soaked in resin and lit so people could see their way. So he took one of those and he went into the monastery. I'm going to burn this place down. And now that says one thing. A lot of times in those days, they were built out of wood, not bricks or stone. So that's why you could burn it down. So I'm going to burn the place down. And he was very fortunate. There was this very smart-talking gatekeeper, a man. And he said, where are you going? Look what they've done to me. Those aren't real nuns. I'm going to sort them out. I can't let them happen to do this to me. Look at me. And the attendant, the gatekeeper said, wow, that is auspicious. You are so lucky to be blessed from those holy nuns. And of course, that's where we get the saying, holy shit. And this businessman, people actually can't, it's amazing what people believe in when it comes to religion. He said, listen, that is so amazingly lucky. Something wonderful is going to happen to you. What were you doing anyway? I was going to the palace. Oh, quick, no time to burn down the monastery. Go home quickly, get changed, get washed, cleaned up, and I'm sure you got another pair of something to wear. Go to the palace, you're going to have good luck today. Guaranteed. And he brought it, he believed it. So off he went, got changed, went back to the palace, and it worked. He got this very good contract from the king, really lucrative. Made a lot of money out of it. So he never bothered to burn down the nuns' watch. I think he gave a donation or something. But anyway, you know what happens in business? You know, people talk to each other and just, how's your business? Oh, you're so lucky. So, no, look, this is how it's done. Forget about those monks' monasteries. Go to the nuns' monastery. And forget about ordinary water, all these blessings, yoso, whatever. Get the real thing. The real thing. Straight from the source. That's why I never told you the story yesterday, because I knew you were going to go to the nuns. And don't go back there. And so, because the word got around, the Buddha got to hear about it. Come over here, nuns. And he told them, look, you were so lucky that time, you know, that you had this smart talking gatekeeper, you know, who convinced this guy not to burn down your monastery, that was holy shit and a great blessing. And so, having reprimanded the nuns, he laid down a rule, the 8th Pajitya rule. If any nun, any bhikkhuni, throws shit over the monastery wall, she has to confess an offence of Pajitya to the other nuns. She can't do that anymore. And it's there, have a look. So sometimes you read some of that stuff and it's very funny. But it also just, you learn the language. This is ordinary language, what, you know, people will do, believe it or not. And so anicca. The anicca, it was they have people who bring food once a week at a certain time. That's called nicca food, regular. And so you go over the road there. Today was Saturday, Sunday we get lots of people always coming. But Monday, we get Shirley, that's Sister Gautami's sister. She usually comes to the monastery on Monday. There's some Thai ladies that come every Tuesday. They come every Tuesday for about 35 years. It's like a regular, it's their day. Other people come as well. But that's called nicca food, the opposite of anicca. So what anicca, this impermanence, actually means, it means something which was always there is now not there anymore. It's gone. So, because something which is always there, which is regular, you tend to take for granted, even to the point you don't see it. It's always there. When it disappears, it's like there's a hole. Now, that simile brings me on. Again, it's to the simile of why jhanas. What's the point of them? Once there was a little tadpole and frog story. This little tadpole, she was born in a lake in Jhana Grove. She was a very smart little tadpole, and she went to tadpole school. She did very well. Finished a grade school, went to high school, and she did A-levels in chemistry. And so she went to university, still in the lake, and there she graduated with honours in chemistry and then carried on doing a PhD in hydrology. Her subject. And so she became an expert in water. And because it was close by and as many other people come to teach in a place like this, she did overhear some Burmese sayadaws talking about the nature of water, Abhidhamma of water. And she even actually, when Ajahn Sujata was coming, talking about the 4 elements, heard Ajahn Sujata talking about water as well. Oh, this is my subject. And even though she spent all her life studying water and was regarded as an expert on water, how can a tadpole know about water? When the tadpole was born in water, grew up in water, lived all its life in water. Tadpole can know theory, but experience can't know water no more than a fish can. But the difference between tadpole and fish is that one day little tadpole grows little arms and legs. Strange, but she's changing from a tadpole to a little frog. And one day little frog, not really knowing what it's doing, presses the letting go button and she emerges out from the water onto a place where she's never been to before, dry land. Like in the realm of the five senses, suddenly they disappear. And in this incredible world of the jhanas. Now, little tadpole, this is weird, this is strange. This is like nothing she's ever experienced before. And later on she'll be able to understand why it was so strange. Something which was always been there for its whole life, water, it's now gone. It's disappeared. Something which was so regular has vanished. It's anicca. That's what anicca means. Five senses. Do you know what the five senses are? In theory, but when they disappear, then you really know. Your body? Yeah, I know my body. Brush its teeth, take it to the toilet, see just how beautiful its shit is, and when I go good meditation. But I don't really know until the body disappears. And the will? Do you know what the will is? I confused you a lot in the first couple of days, talking about the will is not yours. How can you find that out? When you're in the water, you can't really understand what water is. But when you jump out, then you can get some information. And even consciousness mind to see that vanish. Ooh, that is freaky. But that's what we do. That's why we understand what anicca is. Things which were always there, now disappearing. Fading away. And what else we got? Fading, always go too far. Fading away. And cessation. Things stop, where's the all gone? Can't find it, disappeared. And relinquishment. You let them go. So that is the insight, which happens automatically. You don't say, now I'm going to do insight. You say, what the heck is this? You can't stop doing it. It's weird. Okay, just quickly. 4 focuses of mindfulness complete 7 enlightenment factors. So you've done your 4 foundations of mindfulness, Anapanasati. Then, when you're mindful of the body, restrain the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose of mindful, on that occasion you get the steady mindfulness in you. On whatever occasion a steady mindfulness is established, and on that occasion the mindfulness enlightenment factor is aroused in you, you start it, you develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. The mindfulness really goes strong. What's the enemy of mindfulness? The 5 hindrances. And when you are mindful, you explore the Dhamma. You're so aware. You can see all sorts of the world, see a world in a grain of sand, a heaven in a wildflower, infinity in the palm of your hand. The mind is so powerful, you can see anything. You explore the Dhamma with wisdom. On that occasion, the exploration of Dhamma, enlightenment factor is aroused in you. Develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. When you explore the Dhamma with wisdom and embark on a full inquiry into it, unflagging energy, it's interesting, it's not tiring. You're enjoying this. Energize. A lot of time, because you'll be mindful, explore, energize. If you think, you lose energy. Explore, and then you gain energy. Whenever unflagging energy is aroused, as you explore the Dhamma with wisdom, on that occasion the energy enlightenment factor is aroused in you. You develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. When you have aroused energy, unworldly joy. This is one of the first time you put this down. Unworldly, nothing to do with worldly stuff and with attachments and clinging. It's a joy which takes you out from the world. On whatever occasion unworldly joy arises, That occasion, the joy enlightenment factor is aroused in you. You develop it by development. It comes to fulfillment in you. When you experience unworldly joy, your body and mind become tranquil. On whatever occasion the body and mind become tranquil and you experience joy, on that occasion the tranquility enlightenment factor is aroused in you, and you develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. Just pause there. Your tranquility, the body becoming tranquil, at peace, the mind tranquil and peaceful because of joy. Not force, not training, not sort of endurance, but from joy. When you're having a wonderful time inside. People think, wow, is he dead? He's not moved. But you're just so joyful. That is where the tranquility comes from. So, developing the joy. And it is one of the reasons, deliberately, you crack a few jokes, make it happy. So gross stories like, the contents of a toilet bowl and nuns doing special holy water. That joy, that energy, that is actually done on purpose, a teaching tool. To start a little bit of joy coming up. Because you find, if I keep telling stories and jokes and they're enjoyable, you will stay here. If you really get bored, you'll either fall asleep or you go out. Tranquility coming from joy, not willpower. And then when your body is tranquil and you feel pleasure in the mind, this is what happens. You get so nice to be here. The mind becomes still. On whatever occasion the mind becomes still and joyful, on that occasion the stillness, that's samadhi. The enlightenment factor is aroused in you. You develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. It's another thing which really stood out to me. It's in Pali, sukhino cittang samadhiyati. It is from the joy, the happiness, that the mind becomes still and enters deep meditation. Never from force, never from fear, from joy. That was such a powerful spiritual awakening, just to know this is a joyful path. It's not through force and endurance. You don't need to be the Bruce Willis, the Bear Grylls, or whoever it is just great endurance people. No, it's nothing to do with that at all. It's to do with happiness and joy and wisdom. And you observe such a still mind with equanimity. On whatever occasion you observe with equanimity the still mind, on that occasion the equanimity enlightenment factor is aroused in you. And you develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. That is how the four focuses of mindfulness develop and cultivate and complete the seven enlightenment factors. And the seven enlightenment factors, when developed, that means you're an arahant, fully enlightened. So that's already 4 o'clock and a bit. So I think we'll finish there. Again, you have access to this, so you can always read a little bit more later on, or when you go home or whatever. And so that means that I did a lot of this. I chose what I thought eventually was the most important for you, and hopefully it supported the meditation and everything else I've been teaching. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. And just a little extra, because sometimes people ask me, Ajahn Brahm, why do you do these stupid sadhu bits? I never invented them. That was a monk called Ajahn Singtong in Thailand, believe it or not. I just, took what he started and took it a little bit further, but surprisingly, not that much further, because he'd do this blessing. He was a very good disciple of Ajahn Mahabua, Thai forest tradition, highly regarded, great meditator. Ajahn Mahabua called him enlightened, but he would give the blessing. I went to visit these monks when I was after 5 years. When I went to visit him, he would give the blessing, like the blessing some of you may have heard in Bodhinyana today. He started off, you'll hear it tomorrow, Yata Varivaha Pura Pariparenti Sagarang. That's how we do it. He started Yata Varivaha Pura Pariparenti Sagarang Ewa Mewa Ito Dinang Petanang Upa Ichitang Patita Tom Hankiva Mewa Samija Tu Sabe Parentu Sankapa Chitap. And the first time I saw that, I was totally confused. What is going on? Am I supposed to carry on like that, or what am I supposed to do? But what I did see, that he was just so loved and so had this great rapport with everybody. And you can see how it works there. You make it interesting, a bit of fun, a bit of joy, energy, power. And that's where I got that sadhu from Ajahn Singtong. So unfortunately he passed away. It was a great tragedy in 1979, I think. Back then there was a big plane crash and many senior monks died in that plane crash. He was one of them. So anyway, it was amazing just to see the way he could relate to everybody. Amazing monk. Anyway, so there goes the Sutta class. There's going to be another class later on, but apparently I did promise if you wanted to do some offerings now, those with the robes, and now's a good time to do it. Do we need it recorded? Nah.